Laura Miller's tears burned against the delicate scarf draped over her shoulders. The gilded ballroom of the Sterling Grand Manor pulsed with hushed whispers as she ran between marble columns, the sound of her footsteps echoing like silent screams. Behind her, Owen Sterling's grave voice cut through the air like a blade. "Laura, stop!" But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when she had uncovered a truth that shattered everything she believed in. The scent of jasmine and sandalwood incense that always calmed her now suffocated her lungs. The heavy jewelry on her wrists clinked like chains as she fled from the man who had promised to protect her, but who now represented her greatest betrayal. The echo of his words still reverberated in her mind. It was all planned from the start. How had a lost visitor become a prisoner in a game she didn't understand? Before we dive into this story, leave your comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us which city you're joining us from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. 6 months earlier, Laura Miller had arrived in Sterling City, like any young American woman seeking adventure. Daughter of Italian immigrants, she carried in her blood a nostalgia for her ancestral homeland she had never known, only imagined through the whispered stories of her grandmother, Eleanor, during Thanksgiving visits. At 28, she worked as a freelance translator in Chicago, dreaming of travels her modest salary rarely allowed. The opportunity arose through an unexpected email. The Lumina Foundation was seeking a translator fluent in Arabic, Spanish, and English for a special project. The generous payment and the chance to experience Prosperity County made Laura accept without hesitation. She didn't know that this email would seal her fate in ways she could never imagine. Sterling City welcomed her with the relentless desert heat and the dazzling brilliance of a modernity that danced with ancient traditions. From Sterling City International Airport to the Sterling Plaza Hotel, Laura observed from the official car window a city that pulsed between mirrored skyscrapers and historic markets, between the call to prayer and the buzz of luxurious shopping malls. Her hotel room was a small palace, Persian rugs on polished marble, a panoramic view of the city that stretched to the golden desert horizon. Laura touched the silk curtains and felt like a character from 1001 Nights. Tomorrow her work at the foundation would begin, but that night she allowed herself to dream. The first day at the Lumina Foundation revealed a world completely different from her expectations. The modern building housed dozens of projects aimed at women's education, microcredit for small entrepreneurs, and cultural preservation. Laura was introduced to the team by Deborah Adams, an elegant 40-year-old woman who coordinated the educational programs. "You'll be working directly with me," Deborah explained as they walked through corridors decorated with intricate local artwork and contemporary art. "Our goal is to expand programs to Spanish-speaking communities in Central America and underserved communities abroad. Your expertise will be crucial." Laura dove into the work with enthusiasm. She translated documents, participated in video conferences with partner organizations, and developed educational materials. She discovered that the foundation was more than a charity. It was an instrument of genuine social transformation. Women who had never left their small towns received scholarships to study at the best universities in the region. Young entrepreneurs obtained capital to start businesses that supported entire families. It was during her third week that Deborah extended an unexpected invitation. The foundation is holding its annual gala next Friday. It's an important event where we present our results to major donors and authorities. I'd love for you to come as our special guest. Laura hesitated. She hadn't brought suitable clothes for formal events, and the idea of circulating among Sterling City's elite intimidated her. But Deborah insisted with a maternal smile, "Don't worry about a thing. We have a partner boutique that will take care of everything. You need to be there, Laura. Your work deserves to be recognized. The Desert Rose Boutique was a temple of feminine elegance in the heart of Sterling City. Laura was greeted like a princess by Christine, the personal stylist, who immediately envisioned the perfect look. "You have that classic beauty, a blend of heritage and modern charm," Christine said, studying Laura's delicate features. "Something that honors your roots but speaks to today's sophistication." The chosen dress was a work of art, navy blue silk with golden embroidery that resembled desert stars. The cut respected the required modesty but highlighted Laura's natural elegance. A sheer, gold-threaded overlay completed the ensemble. When she saw herself in the mirror, Laura barely recognized her own image. "Perfect," Christine whispered, adjusting the pearl earrings. "You look like a figure from an ancient legend." The gala was to be held at the Sterling Grand Manor, one of the prominent Sterling family's official residences. Laura had never imagined she would step foot in such a revered and imposing location. The manor, with its gilded domes and lush gardens, seemed to have stepped out of a fairy tale. Deborah came to pick her up at the hotel, radiant in an elegant emerald green gown. "You look stunning," she praised, observing Laura in the back seat of the Mercedes. "Tonight will be special, I'm sure." As the car passed through the manor gates, Laura felt her heart quicken. Illuminated gardens stretched as far as the eye could see, fountains danced under colorful lights, and the scent of roses and jasmine floated on the night breeze. It was like entering another world, a realm where beauty and grandeur mingled in perfect harmony. The main ballroom of the manor was even more impressive than her wildest expectations. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling like artificial constellations. Round tables covered with golden damask cloths accommodated the guests, while exuberant floral arrangements perfumed the air. Laura estimated there were at least 300 people there, all dressed with an elegance that bordered on perfection. Deborah guided her through the crowd, introducing her to various personalities, elected officials, entrepreneurs, representatives of international organizations. Laura greeted them in Arabic, Spanish, or English as needed, always impressing with her fluency and natural ease. She felt like an actress playing a role for which she hadn't prepared, but one she seemed born to perform. It was then that she saw him for the first time. Owen Sterling stood at the center of a group of influential men, but even amidst that constellation of power, he shone with his own light. Tall, broad-shouldered, he wore an impeccably tailored dark suit that contrasted with his sun-kissed skin. His dark eyes scanned the room with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding, but there was something more there, an intensity that made people quiet when he spoke. "That's Mr. Owen Sterling," Deborah murmured into Laura's ear, following her gaze. "He's the chairman of the foundation and, well, one of the most influential figures in Prosperity County. They say the governor consults him before making important decisions." Laura watched as he gestured while speaking, his large, expressive hands, emphasizing points in a conversation that seemed to completely capture the attention of his interlocutors. There was a gravity in his posture, but also a natural elegance that made her think of the frontier explorers from her grandmother's stories. "He finances most of our projects," Deborah continued. "He lost his wife 3 years ago in a car accident. Since then, he's dedicated himself entirely to philanthropic work. Some people say it's his way of dealing with the grief." The information made Laura observe him with different eyes. Beneath that aura of power, she now perceived a subtle melancholy, a shadow, that lingered over his movements. It was as if he carried an invisible weight that all his wealth and influence couldn't alleviate. Dinner was served in a ritual of elegance Laura had never witnessed. Fine porcelain plates arrived at the tables laden with regional specialties and international cuisine. Aromatic, slow-roasted short ribs with southwestern spices, pan-seared scallops, creamy hummus, fresh tabbouleh, all presented as works of art. Laura savoured each flavour with reverence, feeling as if each bite was a journey through centuries of culinary tradition. During dinner, Deborah presented the Foundation's annual reports. The numbers were impressive. Over 5,000. Women benefited from educational programs, 300 small businesses financed, 20 schools built in rural areas. Each statistic represented transformed lives, realized dreams, families lifted from poverty. When it was time for the speeches, Owen Sterling stepped onto the improvised stage in the center of the ballroom. His presence was magnetic. Conversations ceased, silverware stopped clinking, all eyes turned to him. Laura felt her heart quicken without understanding why. "Friends, partners, collaborators," he began, his deep voice echoing through the room without need for a microphone. "We gather here not to celebrate our generosity, but to renew our commitment to social justice. Every project we fund, every life we touch, is a step toward the world the Almighty intends for His children." He spoke in a measured, powerful tone, then repeated in English, his words filled with a genuine passion that made something deep within Laura's chest vibrate. It wasn't just political rhetoric. It was the voice of a man who truly believed in the transformative power of education and opportunity. "The true wealth of a nation," Owen continued, "is not in its tech ventures or its gilded skyscrapers. It lies in the realized potential of every woman who learns to read, every young person who starts their first business, every child who dreams of a future better than their parents' present." Applause echoed through the room. But Laura was so absorbed in his words that she almost forgot to clap. There was a sincerity in his voice that touched her unexpectedly. This wasn't a rich man trying to buy absolution for his conscience. This was someone genuinely committed to change. After the speech, Owen descended from the stage and began to circulate among the tables, greeting guests, listening to suggestions, expressing gratitude for support. Laura observed him discreetly, fascinated by the way he connected with each person, always attentive, always present, as if that conversation was the only important thing in the world at that moment. It was then that Deborah made the inevitable introduction. "Mr. Sterling," she called as he approached their table, "I'd like to introduce our new translator, Laura Miller. She's American, but she handles Spanish and Arabic like a native." Owen turned his eyes to Laura, and she felt as if the world paused for an instant. Up close, he was even more impressive. His eyes were a dark brown that bordered on black, with small crinkles at the corners that suggested someone accustomed to smiling despite the natural seriousness of his expression. There was a strength in that gaze, but also a carefully hidden vulnerability. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Miller," he said in perfectly pronounced English, extending his hand. "Deborah has told me much about your excellent work." His hand was warm and strong, with calluses that suggested he hadn't always lived in grand manners. Laura tried to control the tremor in her voice. "The honor is mine, Mr. Sterling. Your work with the Foundation is truly inspiring. Please, just—" "Owen," he corrected with a smile that completely transformed his expression. "Formalities make me feel too old." They conversed briefly about the Foundation's projects, about the Latin American communities that could benefit from the educational programs. Laura was impressed by his knowledge of global social issues, his understanding of the complexities involved in community development work. "You have a very practical perspective," Owen commented after she suggested adaptations in educational materials for different cultural contexts. "We need to talk more about this. How about we have lunch this week to discuss your ideas in more detail?" Laura felt the blood rush to her cheeks. "That would be an honor," she replied, hoping her voice sounded more professional than she felt. "Great. My assistant will contact you to finalize the details," Owen said. But before moving away, he added in a lower voice, "And thank you for bringing new energy to our work. Sometimes we need fresh eyes to see possibilities we can't." As he moved away to greet other guests, Laura remained seated with her heart pounding. Deborah watched her with a knowing smile. "He was impressed with you. Owen rarely dedicates so much time to new staff." "He's just being polite," Laura murmured, trying to convince herself that the interaction had been nothing more than professional courtesy. "Honey," Deborah chuckled, "I've known Owen for 5 years. That wasn't just politeness. He was genuinely interested in what you had to say." The rest of the night passed in a blur of conversations, soft music, and delicious desserts. Laura tried to focus on other interactions, but her eyes invariably sought Owen across the ballroom. Each time their gazes met by chance, she felt an electric current run down her spine. When the gala finally concluded, Laura bid farewell to Deborah and her other colleagues, still processing the intensity of the night. On the way back to the hotel, she observed Sterling City's lights through the taxi window, but her mind was completely occupied with Owen Sterling's dark eyes and the promise of a lunch that could change the course of her stay in Prosperity County. The lunch was scheduled for the Crimson Sky, a restaurant on the top floor of the Four Seasons Hotel with panoramic city views. Laura spent the entire morning changing outfits, unsure of what would be appropriate for a business meeting with one of Prosperity County's most powerful men. She opted for a discreet but elegant ensemble, black tailored pants, a cream silk blouse. In the mirror, she tried to decipher her own feelings. "It's just a professional meeting," she repeated to herself, ignoring her accelerated heartbeat. Owen was already waiting when she arrived, promptly at 12:30. He had exchanged the formal suit from the gala for a white dress shirt and a navy blazer, maintaining elegance but with a more relaxed air. When he saw her approach, he immediately stood up, a gesture of courtesy that surprised her. "Punctuality is a rare virtue these days," he commented, pulling out her chair. "My late wife always said that arriving on time shows respect for those waiting." The mention of his wife created a moment of delicate silence. Laura noticed a shadow pass through his eyes, an old pain that still throbbed beneath the surface. "She must have been a wise woman," she responded softly. "She was," Owen agreed, and Laura noticed how he used the past tense with painful precision. "But today we're here to talk about the future, not the past." Lunch began with traditional Mediterranean tapas, creamy hummus, aromatic baba ganoush, fresh tabbouleh, and warm pita bread. Owen ordered spiced herbal tea to accompany it, explaining that it was a family tradition his grandfather had taught him. "Tea calms the mind and opens the heart for important conversations," he said, serving her with his own hands. As they ate, they discussed the Foundation's projects. Laura presented her ideas for adapting educational materials to different Spanish-speaking cultures, suggesting partnerships with Latin American universities and community organizations in Guatemala and other parts of Central America. Owen listened attentively, asking insightful questions that demonstrated his deep knowledge of social development. "You have a very practical view of things," he observed, after Laura explained how small adaptations in curricula could drastically increase course completion rates. "Most of the consultants we hire come with complex theories, but few understand the reality of the people we want to help." "Perhaps it's because I come from a reality closer to theirs," Laura replied. "My family immigrated from Italy with almost nothing. I saw my mother struggling to learn English, my father working 3 jobs to support us. Education and opportunity changed our lives." Owen studied her with renewed interest. "Tell me more about your family." Laura shared stories of her childhood in Chicago, of the Italian-American community in the old Italian Quarter, of the European traditions preserved in American territory. She spoke about her grandmother Eleanor, who told old country legends on winter evenings, planting in her heart seeds of nostalgia for a land she had never visited. "Your grandmother would be welcome at any traditional family gathering," Owen chuckled. "The best stories are always told by grandmothers. They hold the wisdom of our ancestors." "And your family?" Laura asked. "What was it like growing up with so much privilege?" The question made him pause. "Privilege always comes with responsibility," he finally said. "I was educated to lead, but also to serve. My father always said that our wealth doesn't belong to us. We are merely its temporary custodians." He spoke of his childhood divided between grand manors in Stirling City and camps in the Mojave Desert, where his grandfather taught him the ancestral traditions of the early pioneers. "I learned to ride a horse before I drove a car, to navigate by the stars before using GPS. My grandfather wanted me to understand where we came from before accepting where we were going." The conversation flowed naturally, moving from professional topics to personal stories, from philosophy on social development to childhood memories. Laura discovered that Owen had studied at Oxford, but preferred to return home instead of accepting tempting offers abroad. "Why?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Because this is where I can make a difference," he replied simply. "The world doesn't need another successful entrepreneur in Chicago or New York, but my people need someone committed to their progress." The restaurant began to empty, but neither of them seemed in a hurry to end the meeting. Owen ordered spiced coffee with cardamom and gourmet date pastries to accompany it. "May I ask a personal question?" he said suddenly, stirring his coffee with a small golden spoon. Laura nodded, feeling her heart quicken. "Why would a talented translator like you accept temporary assignments far from home? Surely it's not for the money. You could earn much more working for multinational corporations in the States." The question caught her off guard. Laura remained silent for a moment, organizing her thoughts. "I think I'm looking for something I'm not quite sure what it is," she finally admitted. "My life in Chicago was comfortable, predictable, but I felt like I was living a life someone else had planned for me, not the life I truly wanted." "And what life do you want?" "One that has meaning," she answered without hesitation. "One where I can look in the mirror and know that I made a difference in the world, however small." Owen observed her with an intensity that made her blush. "You are a courageous woman, Laura Miller. Few have the courage to leave security in search of purpose." "And you," she countered, "have you found what you were looking for?" The question seemed to hit him in an unexpected way. He looked away toward the window, where the city stretched under the scorching midday sun. "I thought I had," he said slowly. "After my wife died, I thought philanthropic work would be enough to fill the void. But lately," he paused, as if revealing something he hadn't even admitted to himself. "Lately, I feel like I'm just going through the motions of life, without truly living it." The moment of vulnerability surprised him as much as her. Owen rarely opened up like this, especially to someone he had known for such a short time. But there was something about Laura that made him want, to be honest, to shed the masks he wore in public. "Perhaps it's time for you to also seek a life with meaning," she suggested softly. "Perhaps it is," he agreed, turning his eyes back to her. "And perhaps you can help me find it." The sentence hung in the air between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Laura felt they had crossed an invisible line, moving from the safe territory of the professional to something more dangerous and exciting. "I have a proposal," Owen said suddenly, as if he had made an important decision. "How about we visit some of the Foundation's projects together? You need to see the fieldwork, to develop the educational materials, and well, it's been a while since I visited the communities personally." You want me to accompany you on official visits? Laura asked, trying to keep her voice professional despite the excitement she felt. Not so official visits, he corrected with a smile. I was thinking more of something informal. You, me, perhaps Deborah to join us. We can talk directly with the beneficiaries, understand their real needs, see how we can improve our programs. The idea was tempting and terrifying at the same time. Spending more time with Owen meant exposing herself to feelings she wasn't ready to name, but it also represented the opportunity to do work that truly mattered, to touch lives in a meaningful way. When would we start? She asked, already knowing what her answer would be. How about next week? We could visit the school we built in Oakhaven, then the community centre in Heritage Grove. If you're available, of course. Laura looked into those dark eyes that seemed to see directly into her soul and knew that she was about to plunge into waters much deeper than she had imagined when she accepted that job in Prosperity County. I'll be available, she responded, unknowingly sealing both their destinies. The first visit to Oakhaven changed everything. Owen arrived to pick her up at dawn, personally driving a white Toyota SUV instead of the official Mercedes with a chauffeur. He wore dark jeans and a light blue cotton shirt, looking more like an entrepreneur on vacation than a powerful magnate. Only the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist and the way he carried his shoulders betrayed his social position. You prefer to travel without all the protocol? Laura asked, settling into the passenger seat. Sometimes, yes, he replied, adjusting the rearview mirror. When I want to understand people's reality, I can't arrive with a retinue that intimidates them. They need to feel comfortable speaking the truth. The road to Oakhaven cut through the desert like a black ribbon on golden sand. Owen drove with the same confidence with which he did everything, unhurried yet determined. They talked about music. He loved Etta James, she preferred Billie Holiday. About literature, both were fans of William Faulkner. About trips they dreamed of taking. I've always wanted to see the Alaskan wilderness, Owen confessed, as he passed a truck loaded with produce. It must be incredible to be in a place where nature is still greater than man. And I've always dreamed of the Mojave Desert, Laura replied. My grandmother used to say that in the middle of the desert, far from everything, you can hear your own soul speaking. He looked at her in surprise. Your grandmother truly was wise. I can take you there one day if you'd like. I have a traditional camp in the heart of the desert. It's where I go when I need to think. The Oakhaven School was a modern two-story building, painted in vibrant colors that contrasted with the monotonous landscape of the surroundings. Children played in the courtyard, their laughter echoing under the morning sun. When they saw the car approaching, they ran towards the gate, waving enthusiastically. Nora Peterson, the school principal, received them with tears in her eyes. Mr. Sterling, what an honor to welcome you again. She was a 50-year-old woman, grey hair tucked under a colorful headscarf, eyes shining with passion for education. It's our honor, Mrs. Peterson, Owen responded respectfully. How are things going here? As they visited the classrooms, Laura observed how Owen interacted with the children. He knelt to be at their height, remembered their names, asked about their studies with genuine curiosity. A 7-year-old girl named Amy proudly showed him a drawing of her family, and he praised it as if it were a masterpiece from the Met. Are you a father? Laura asked quietly as they watched the scene. No, he replied, a shadow crossing his face. My wife and I never had that opportunity, but I always wanted to have children. In the teacher's lounge, Nora presented the school's challenges. We have 42 students this year, a record, she explained proudly. But we face difficulties. Many families still resist sending their daughters to school after the age of 12. Why? Laura asked. Tradition, fear, lack of prospects. Nora sighed. They think educating a girl is a waste of money since she'll get married and take care of the home. Owen listened in silence, his fists slightly clenched. And what can we do to change that? We need to show real examples, Nora suggested. If mothers saw educated women who became successful, who managed to balance career and family, perhaps they would change their minds. Laura had an idea. How about a mentorship program? Professional women who would adopt some students, follow their progress, show them possibilities? Owen's eyes lit up. Excellent idea. We can start a pilot project right here. They spent the afternoon talking with the older students, listening to their dreams and fears. Michelle, 14, wanted to be a doctor, but knew her parents were already looking for a husband for her. Sarah, 15, loved math, but helped her mother with household chores every afternoon instead of doing her homework. Why don't you talk to your parents about your dreams? Laura asked. They wouldn't understand, Michelle replied sadly. They say I dream too much, that I need to be more realistic. Owen joined the conversation, sitting on one of the desks, too small for his frame. Do you know what my grandfather used to tell me when I was a child? The girls shook their heads. He said that the Almighty gave us dreams so that we could glimpse our potential. Giving up on a dream is wasting a divine gift. The words created a thoughtful silence. For the first time, those girls heard a man of authority validate their aspirations. On the way back to Sterling City, Laura and Owen were more silent, processing everything they had seen and heard. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple that seemed straight out of a Bierstadt landscape. It was an important day, Owen finally said. Why? Because it reminded me why I started the foundation. Sometimes, when you spend too much time behind a desk, signing papers and approving budgets, you forget that every number represents a real life. Laura observed him in profile, noticing how his features softened in the golden light of dusk. And what did you see today? I saw that there's still a lot of work to do, but I also saw hope. Those girls, they have a strength that inspired me. Michelle reminded me of myself, Laura admitted. When I was 15, I also wanted to be a doctor. My parents thought I should study something more suitable for women, like teaching or nursing. What happened? I realized I could help people in other ways. Translation allowed me to connect cultures, facilitate communication between different peoples. In the end, I found my purpose. Owen stopped the car at a natural overlook from where Sterling City could be seen in the distance, its lights beginning to shine in the growing twilight. Want to take a walk? This place has a special energy. They walked side by side on the still warm sand toward a small rocky elevation. The silence of the desert was profound, broken only by the gentle wind whispering among the stones. Laura took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the pure, dry air. I understand why your grandmother talked about hearing the soul in the desert, Owen said, stopping beside a smooth rock. Here, far from all the noise of civilization, you can think clearly. Laura sat on the rock, adjusting her scarf, which the wind insisted on disarranging. Owen remained standing beside her, hands in his pockets, looking at the horizon. May I ask you something? She said hesitantly. Of course. Do you miss her? Your wife? The question made him stiffen for a moment. Laura immediately regretted asking something so intimate, but before she could apologize, he answered. Every day, he said simply. Jasmine was my anchor. When the world became too complicated, too political, too artificial, she brought me back to what truly mattered. After she left, I felt adrift for a long time. And now? Owen looked at her, his dark eyes reflecting the first stars that began to appear in the sky. Now I feel that perhaps I'm finding my way again. There was something in the way he said it, in the intensity of his gaze, that made Laura's heart beat dangerously fast. She stood up from the rock, creating a safe distance. "We should head back," she said, trying to keep her voice casual. "It's getting late." But when she turned to walk back to the car, she stumbled on a loose stone. Owen caught her by the arms, pulling her against his chest to prevent her from falling. For a moment, they stayed like that, very close, breathing the same air, feeling each other's warmth. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rougher than usual. Laura nodded, but didn't pull away immediately. She could feel his heartbeat through his shirt, see every detail of his eyes in the soft light of the rising moon. She knew she was dangerously close to a line that, once crossed, would change everything between them. It was Owen, who pulled back first, releasing her gently but firmly. "You're right. We should go back." The rest of the drive to Sterling City was filled with unresolved tension. When he dropped her off at the hotel, their hands briefly touched as they said goodbye, and Laura felt an electric current shoot up her arm. "The next visit will be in Heritage Grove," Owen said, maintaining a professional distance. "Can I pick you up on Thursday?" "I'll be ready," she replied, knowing she wasn't just referring to the trip. Heritage Grove was different from anything Laura had seen in Prosperity County. The historic town preserved its traditional adobe and stone buildings, a living testament to the region's pioneering history. Owen explained that his family had roots there, where his great-grandfather had built the Sterling family's first commercial empire. "This place is sacred to me," he said, as they drove through the narrow, winding streets. "Here I learned that luxury isn't wealth, but connection to your origins." The Foundation's community center occupied a restored traditional home, with internal courtyards and stone arches shading rooms where women of all ages gathered to learn trades, share experiences, and dream of better futures. Karen Brown, the local coordinator, greeted them with a warm smile. At 60, her hands were marked by decades of manual labor, and her eyes sparkled with accumulated wisdom. "Mr. Sterling, may Providence bless you for being here, and this must be the American lady Deborah praises so much." "Greetings, Mrs. Brown," Laura replied respectfully. "It's an honor to meet you." The center buzzed with activity. In the sewing room, 10 women worked on industrial machines, creating traditional and modern clothing that would be sold in Sterling City boutiques. In the craft workshop, others produced rugs, jewelry, and decorative objects. A smaller room housed the adult literacy program. "It all started with 5 women and a borrowed sewing machine," Karen explained proudly. "Today we have 42 regular participants and a waiting list." Laura talked at length with the women, listening to their stories. There was Amy, 23, who had learned to read at 21 and now dreamed of opening her own shop. Susan, 40, who supported 5 children with her sewing income after her husband suffered a work accident. Natalie, 55, who had discovered a natural talent for creating jewelry and had become the most sought-after artisan in the region. "What has changed most in your lives?" Laura asked. "Confidence," Amy replied without hesitation. "Before, I felt useless, a burden to my family. Now I know I'm capable of achieving anything I want." Owen listened to the conversations in silence, occasionally asking questions about challenges or suggestions for improvements. Laura noticed how he remembered personal details of each woman: Amy's son, who was studying engineering; Natalie's granddaughter, who had been born prematurely; Susan's plans to expand her business. During the lunch prepared by the women themselves, a feast of slow-roasted short ribs, fresh salad, and gourmet date pastries, the conversation became more informal. The women asked Laura questions about Chicago, about her family, about her impression of Prosperity County. "Is it true that in Chicago, women have always been able to drive cars?" asked one of the youngest, Sarah, 19. "Yes," Laura replied. My grandmother drove in the 1960s, when many places in the world still didn't allow it. And you? Do you drive? I've been driving since I was 18. In fact, my father taught me. He used to say that an independent woman needed to know how to get around on her own. The women exchanged significant glances. Prosperity County had allowed women to drive only a few years before, a revolutionary change that still generated resistance in certain segments of society. Did you face difficulties when you started driving? Laura asked. Initially, yes, Karen admitted. Some people on the street made comments, others gave us dirty looks. But Mr. Sterling was one of the first to publicly support our freedom to drive. He said that a woman who can come and go as she pleases is a more productive and happier woman. Laura looked at Owen with renewed respect. She hadn't known he had been active in advocating for women's rights. Social change takes time, Owen said modestly, but it is our duty as leaders to facilitate transitions that benefit all of society. After lunch, Karen took them to see the community library, a cozy space with shelves full of books in English, Spanish, and surprisingly, Italian. We asked to include books in Italian after we heard we would have an American consultant with Italian heritage, she explained. We want our women to know literatures from all over the world. Laura was touched to see works by Mark Twain, Flannery O'Connor, and Nicholas Sparks on the shelves. May I suggest some titles? She offered. There are wonderful American authors who could inspire these women. Please, Karen exclaimed. And perhaps you could organize a reading session. It would be incredible to have someone who truly understands the culture behind the books. The afternoon passed quickly between visits to the different workshops, conversations about expanding programs, and planning new projects. When it was time to leave, the women gathered to say goodbye, each offering small handmade gifts, an embroidered scarf, a silver bracelet, a small rug. In the car, on the way back to Sterling City, Laura was visibly emotional. Those women are incredible, she said, caressing the embroidered scarf Amy had given her. The strength they have, their determination to change their lives. You inspired them as much as they inspired you, Owen observed. I saw how they reacted when you talked about your grandmother, about your own journey. You represented for them an example that it's possible to be an independent woman and still honor your roots. I never thought of it that way. You should. You have a gift for connecting with people, for making them feel seen and heard. It's a rare equality. This time, Owen suggested a different stop on the way back. Instead of the rocky overlook, he took her to a small, hidden oasis, a natural depression in the terrain where a few palm trees grew around a spring. This place has special meaning for my family, he explained as they walked under the shade of the palm trees. My great-grandfather used to stop here during his trading journeys. He said the fresh water from this spring was blessed. Laura knelt by the small spring, wetting her hands in the crystal-clear water. It was surprisingly cool, a relief after the day's heat. It's magical, she murmured. Jasmine loved this place, Owen said suddenly, sitting on the sand under one of the palm trees. We used to come here when we needed to talk about important things, make difficult decisions. Laura dried her hands and joined him, maintaining a respectful distance. What kind of decisions? Investments in the foundation, policy changes I considered supporting, ethical dilemmas about business. He paused, scooping a handful of sand and letting it trickle through his fingers. The last time we came here, she was trying to convince me to run for public office. She said I could do more for the region if I had official political power. And what did you decide? That I preferred to maintain my independence. Partisan politics would limit my ability to work with different groups, to be an impartial voice for social change. He looked at her. It was the right decision. After she died, I realized that my true calling was indeed philanthropic work. She would be proud of what you've built. I hope so. Owen picked up a small, smooth stone and tossed it into the water, creating concentric circles that spread across the surface. But lately I've been thinking that perhaps she wanted me to do more than just work, that I should start truly living again. The observation created a palpable tension between them. Laura knew the conversation was heading into dangerous territory, but she couldn't force herself to change its course. "What does truly living mean to you?" she asked softly. Owen didn't answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice carried a vulnerability she had never heard before. "It means allowing myself to feel again. It means not being afraid, to open up to new possibilities, even if that means risking suffering another loss." They looked at each other, and Laura knew they were no longer just talking about life philosophy. Something was happening between them, an attraction that went far beyond the professional or the friendly. "Owen," she began, but he gently raised his hand. "I know," he said. "I feel it too. But we need to be careful. You're here temporarily. I have responsibilities that complicate things. I don't want either of us to get hurt." Laura nodded, appreciating his honesty even if a part of her wished he were less noble. "You're right. We should keep things professional." But as they walked back to the car, their hands accidentally touched, and neither of them pulled away immediately. For a moment they remained like that, fingers intertwined, silently admitting that keeping things professional would be much harder than they had imagined. "Laura," Owen said when they reached the car, his voice laden with an intensity that made her look at him. "Regardless of where this goes, I want you to know that these past few days have been the most alive I've felt in 3 years." Before she could answer, he opened the car door for her and the moment passed. But as they drove back to Sterling City in a silence charged with unexplored possibilities, both knew they had crossed a line from which there would be no turning back. The discovery happened by chance, as the worst revelations always do. Laura was organizing documents in the Foundation's office when she found a folder marked Project Iris, Confidential. Inside it, a series of emails between Owen and various international contacts dated 2 months before her arrival in Prosperity County. Her name appeared in several messages, confirming Laura Miller accepts the position. Her qualifications are exactly what we needed for Phase 2 of the project. Excellent. The presence of an American consultant of Italian heritage will lend international credibility to our work with Latin American communities. Her personal story is particularly useful for our objectives. Agreed. Furthermore, her appearance and background make her suitable for other roles that may arise during her stay. Laura's blood ran cold. Other roles. She continued reading, each email revealing layers of a carefully orchestrated manipulation. The gala invitation was strategic. We needed her to feel special, valued. Once the personal connection is established, it will be easier to extend her contract. Mr. Sterling personally approved the selection. He said she is exactly the type of person who can humanize our international image. The last message, sent just 1 week after the gala, was the one that devastated her most. Phase 2 successfully implemented. Mr. Sterling has developed personal interest in the consultant as planned. Recommend proceeding with caution to maintain engagement without compromising project objectives. Laura dropped the papers, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Everything had been a game. Her selection, the gala invitation, the lunches, the community visits, even the intimate moments they had shared. All planned, calculated, manipulated. She remembered their conversation, At the Oasis, when Owen spoke of truly living, of allowing himself to feel again, was even that part of the script? Was he such a consummate actor that he could falsify vulnerability? "Laura, are you okay?" Deborah's voice made her jump. The coordinator had entered the office and was now observing her with concern. "I found some documents," Laura murmured, showing the folder. Deborah's face paled. "Where did you find this? Does it matter? Is this true? Was my hiring a setup from the beginning?" Deborah closed the office door and sat heavily in the chair opposite the desk. "It's complicated, Laura. Yes, your selection was guided, but not in the way these emails make it seem." "Then explain it to me the way it really was." "Project Iris is real. It's an initiative to expand our work to Spanish-speaking communities in Latin America. We genuinely needed someone with your qualifications, but—" Deborah hesitated. Owen was going through a difficult time. 3 years of grief, obsessive dedication to work, refusal to engage socially. Some people close to him thought that perhaps the presence of an intelligent and independent woman could help him open up again. Some people who— Exactly. His sister, Senator Nora Sterling, some close family friends. They were worried about him. Laura felt nauseous. "So I was a kind of therapy, a tool to cure him of his depression." "No, it wasn't like that." Deborah stood up, approaching her. "Listen, when you arrived here, when you started working with us, everything changed. Your talent is real, your passion for the work is genuine, and what happened between you and Owen, no one planned that. That's real." "How can I be sure?" The tears Laura had held back began to roll down her cheeks. "How can I believe anything now? Because I've known Owen for 5 years. I saw how he was before you arrived, a man merely existing, not living, and I saw how he transformed in the last few weeks. He's not a manipulator, Laura. He's a man who fell in love against all expectations and is just as scared as you are. Does he know about the plan?" Deborah hesitated for a moment too long. "He knew his sister and some friends were concerned about him. But I believe he didn't know the specific details of the manipulation." "You believe, you're not sure." Deborah's silence was answer enough. Laura gathered her personal belongings from the desk, ignoring Deborah's pleas to talk more about the situation. Her mind was a whirlwind of anger, humiliation, and pain. How could she have been so naive? How could she not have noticed she was being manipulated? Back at the hotel, Laura locked herself in her room and called home. Her mother answered on the second ring, and hearing her familiar voice almost made her completely crumble. "Mom, I need to come home." "Laura, what happened, honey? Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. I made a terrible mistake. I thought I had found something special here, but it was all a lie." She spent the next hour explaining the situation to her mother, who listened patiently before offering the maternal wisdom only a mother can give. "Laura, have you considered that perhaps the initial intention doesn't matter as much as what actually happened? If the feelings became real, if the work you're doing is truly impacting lives, how can I trust his feelings if it all started as a lie? There's only one way to find out, by talking to him directly." But Laura wasn't ready for that conversation. Instead, she spent the next 2 days avoiding Owen, cancelling meetings, refusing calls. She immersed herself in work, finalizing translations and reports as if her life depended on it. It was on the 3rd day that he appeared at the hotel. Laura was at the gym when the receptionist informed her that Mr. Owen Sterling was waiting for her in the lobby. Her first instinct was to say she wasn't available, but something in the employee's expression, a mixture of reverence and nervousness, made her realize she couldn't simply ignore him indefinitely. He was sitting in one of the leather armchairs near the entrance, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. When he saw her approach, he immediately stood up, and she could see in his eyes that he knew she had discovered everything. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, keeping her voice firm despite her inner tremor. "Please, Laura, 5 minutes." She led him to a discreet cafe in the hotel itself, choosing a secluded table where they could have privacy. Owen ordered spiced herbal tea for both of them, but neither touched their cups when they arrived. "I learned you saw the emails," he said without preamble. "Learned from whom?" "Deborah called me. She was worried about you." Laura let out a bitter laugh. "Of course she was. She can't let the project fail now that they've invested so much time manipulating me." "It wasn't like that." Owen's voice came out louder than he intended, making a few people look over. He controlled himself, continuing in a lower tone. "Yes, my sister and some friends were worried about me. Yes, they may have guided your hiring thinking. That professional interaction with an intelligent woman could do me good. But I didn't know the details, and I never would have agreed if I knew you would be manipulated in this way. But you knew it wasn't a coincidence." Owen closed his eyes for a moment. "I suspected. Nora was very insistent about me personally meeting the new consultant, about inviting you to the gala. But I thought it was just her professional interest in the Foundation's projects." "And when did suspicion turn into certainty?" "The night of the gala. When I saw how you reacted to the work we do, when I noticed your genuine passion for helping people, I knew none of this was a coincidence. Nora knows me too well." Laura stared at him, trying to decipher if she was hearing the truth or another carefully rehearsed performance. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid. Afraid that you would leave. Afraid that you would think I was part of the manipulation. Afraid that—" He paused, running his hands through his hair. "Afraid that you would discover that I had truly fallen in love with you and think it was all a lie." The words hung between them like a dangerous confession. Laura felt her heart race, but forced herself to maintain composure. "How can I believe it's true now?" "You can't," he admitted sadly. "And I understand why you can't. Just don't leave yet. Give me a chance to prove that what I feel is real, that the work you're doing is too important to be wasted because of other people's mistakes." Laura looked into those dark eyes that had so captivated her and saw there a pain that seemed as real as her own. But pain could be feigned, vulnerability could be acted, and she was no longer sure she could distinguish truth from performance. "I need time to think," she finally said. Owen nodded, rising from his chair. "Take all the time you need. But Laura—" He hesitated at the edge of the table. "Regardless of what you decide about me, please, don't abandon the work with the women of Heritage Grove and Oakhaven. They need you, and you found your purpose here. Don't let other people's flaws steal that from you." After he left, Laura remained seated for a long time, looking at the 2 cups of cooling tea on the table, trying to separate her feelings from the reality of the facts. One thing she knew for sure: nothing would be simple after that day. The decision came through an unexpected call. Laura was in her room, distractedly flipping through a William Faulkner book she had bought at the local market, when her phone rang. It was Karen from Heritage Grove, and her voice trembled with urgency. "Laura, dear, you need to come here. Something terrible has happened." "What is it?" "Amy, her husband found out she was learning to read. He hit her and said he won't allow her to come to the center anymore. She's devastated, and the other women are afraid their husbands will do the same thing." Laura's heart broke. Amy, the 23-year-old who had learned to read at 21 and dreamed of opening her own shop. Amy, whose eyes sparkled with pride when she could read an entire sentence without help. "Where is she now?" "Here with me. She brought her children too. They have nowhere to go if her husband throws her out." Laura didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." But when she reached the hotel lobby, she discovered that Owen was already there, car keys in hand, his expression as worried as hers. "Deborah called me," he explained before she could ask. "Said you received an emergency call from Heritage Grove." Laura wanted to refuse his company, to maintain the distance she had established between them in recent days. But Amy needed help, and pride would not save that young woman from a desperate situation. "Let's go," she said simply. The drive to Heritage Grove was tense and silent. Owen drove with controlled urgency, respecting the emotional space Laura had created, but she could feel his genuine concern for the situation. Regardless of their problems, Amy's suffering united them in a common purpose. They found Amy in the community center, sitting in a corner of the sewing room with her two small children sleeping in her lap. Her lip was swollen, there was a purple mark on her right arm, and her eyes, once so bright, were swollen from crying. "Amy, my dear," Laura murmured, kneeling beside her. "What can I do to help?" "There's nothing you can do," Amy whispered. "My husband found out I was coming here secretly, that I was learning to read. He said I'm a disobedient woman, that I'm being influenced by dangerous modern ideas." Owen approached, maintaining a respectful distance. "Where would you like to be now, Amy? What would make you feel safe?" I wanted to be able to stay with my sister in Sterling City. She always said I could live with her if I needed to, but how will I get there without money? How will I support my children without work?" "You have work," Laura said firmly. "Your sewing skills are excellent. I can help you get a position at one of Sterling City's textile companies. And I can arrange temporary safe housing," Owen added. "We have an assistance program for women in difficult situations." Amy looked at both of them with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You would really do that for me?" "You're not just a project to us," Laura said, holding her hands. "You're our friend." The next few hours were a whirlwind of organization. Owen made calls to arrange a safe house. Laura contacted textile companies in Sterling City. Karen organized transportation and helped Amy pack. When the husband appeared at the center demanding his wife return home, Owen confronted him with calm but implacable authority. "Your wife is a free person," he said in a formal tone, each word heavy with meaning. "If she chooses to seek knowledge and independence, that is her right, guaranteed by both our traditions and our laws." The man tried to argue about traditions and women's roles, but Owen's presence, a respected magnate publicly defending Amy's rights, made him eventually back down, muttering empty threats. By nightfall, Amy and her children were safe in a welcoming home on the outskirts of Sterling City, with guaranteed employment at a textile factory managed by one of the Foundation's partner companies. It was a new beginning, frightening but full of possibilities. "How can I thank you?" Amy asked as they said goodbye. "By being happy," Laura replied. "By proving to yourself and your daughters that a woman can choose her own destiny." On the drive back to the city, something had changed between Laura and Owen. The urgency of the situation had broken down the barriers she had built, revealing again the fundamental connection that united them. "Thank you," she said when they stopped at a traffic light, "for what you did for Amy today. You don't need to thank me for doing what's right, but you could have chosen not to get involved. You could have let me handle the situation alone." Owen looked at her. "Laura, regardless of our personal issues, I would never leave a woman in danger when I can help, and I would never let you face a difficult situation alone." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. "Owen, I need to say something. I'm listening. I saw you today with Amy. I saw how you treated her with respect and dignity, how you defended her rights without hesitation. I saw you organizing practical help, using your influence to protect her, and I realized that cannot be faked. Genuine compassion cannot be acted. He pulled the car to the shoulder, turning completely to face her. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe I was unfair. Maybe I let my pain cloud my judgment of your character. Laura took a deep breath. The initial manipulation was real, and that still hurts. But what grew between us? I think that's real too. It is real, he confirmed, his voice laden with emotion. Everything I feel for you is real. The way you light up my life, how you make me want to be a better man, how your presence transformed my world from grey to colourful. None of that was planned or manufactured. Laura felt tears in her eyes. But how will we overcome how it started? How do we build something solid on a foundation of lies? By building our own foundation, Owen said, reaching out to touch her face with infinite tenderness. Based on truth, honesty, on the real love we discovered in each other. What if it doesn't work? What if the differences between our lives are too great? Then at least we will have tried. At least we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if. When he kissed her, softly at first, then with all the contained passion of the past few weeks, Laura knew she had found her home. Not in a geographical place, but in the heart of a man who saw and valued her for who she truly was. 6 months later, the wedding ceremony united 2 cultures, 2 families, and 2 hearts that had found completeness in each other. Laura's mother, dressed in a specially embroidered gown for the occasion, wept with joy at seeing her radiant daughter. Owen's friends, including those who had orchestrated the initial meeting, celebrated a union that had exceeded all expectations. Amy was among the guests, now a production manager at her textile company, her children well-dressed and smiling by her side. During the reception, she approached Laura. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing me that we can choose our destiny." "Thank you," Laura replied, "for reminding me of what truly matters in life." Owen found them talking and joined them, putting his arm around his new wife's waist. "Ready for our honeymoon in the Alaskan wilderness?" he asked. Laura smiled. "More than ready. I can't wait to show you the wild where nature is still greater than man." "And then we'll come home," Owen said, "to continue the work we started together." As they danced under the desert stars, with the scent of jasmine floating on the night breeze, Laura thought of her grandmother Eleanor and the old country legends she had told. Sometimes the best stories were those that began with a misunderstanding and ended with true love. "Where do we go now?" she murmured against his chest. "Anywhere. That allows us to grow together," Owen replied, kissing the top of her head. "The destination matters less than the company." And so, under the infinite sky of Prosperity County, 2 hearts that had found their home in each other began to write a new story, a love story that transcended cultures, overcame obstacles, and proved that sometimes the best destinies are those we never planned to reach. Dear listeners, we hope this story has touched your heart. If you were moved, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what resonated with you most. Every day, we bring you real stories, full of emotion and humanity. Your voice is part of this universe.